Now, clearly there's other taxes that you need to consider rather than just negative gearing through income tax here. Capital gains tax and also GST in some cases if you're a developer or you are subject to GST. For most residential property investors, GST isn't something that where they're charging it on the rent. They'll obviously pay GST to some of their service providers, but to what extent do most property investors need to concern themselves with GST, Julia?
Well, they need to make sure that when they buy the property about the GST clauses in the contract. Now, an example of this was a client of, well, she wasn't a client of mine when she did it. She was a client of mine when she found out what she'd done. She went to an auction down in Sydney and bought a residential property that had been used by a chiropractor as their place of business. And this chiropractor put a going concern clause in the contract, which means by agreeing to the going concern clause, she bought it at auction, she just signed what was put in front of her. All residential sale contracts are the same, aren't they? Sure as eggs, she'd agreed by that to register for GST and use it in a business. And the minute she decided to use it as her home, well, then she had to pay back the notional GST that had been saved by the going concern clause. So this was a long time ago. Fortunately for her, the property was only $500,000 that she bought. She then had to pay the tax office another $50,000. So they need to be concerned at that point in time. They need to get their account to look at these contracts. In fact, I'm working with solicitors at the moment to try and get something where we can get people online to do it, to make sure it's done before you go signing, before you go to an auction, you know, like a 24-hour turnaround. The next problem is if you build the house as a rental and you sell it after holding it for less than 5 years, there's a risk that the tax office will come along later and ping you for GST. And that problem is that if they're successful in pinging you for GST, it may be too late to put a margin scheme clause in the contract, which means you pay a lot more GST than if you had put that in the contract in the first place.
Okay. Quite often we're saying to someone, get a solicitor to check this, right, so they can flag that. But you're saying if in doubt, get your accountant to have a look at the clause with reference to specifically GST so that you don't get stung.
Yeah, or a solicitor that's au with the GST laws. In the case of this client bought this chiropractic premises, she used a conveyancing firm and they were alert enough to say, you need to talk to an accountant. They couldn't answer it, but you need to talk to an accountant about it. The trouble was with an auction, it was all too late anyway. It didn't matter.
Well, yeah, exactly. You got no cooling off there.